So really proud to represent Allegacy Federal Credit Union. As you can see on this little banner behind me, we really are focused on well-being and all manner of well-being. And financial health is really an area that kind of permeates all stages of life, everyone's situations, because we all have money. We all spend money. We all are trying maybe to do better with our money. And so it's something that everyone can relate to. And it doesn't matter your zip code. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It's all about how much money you can keep. That's a really great expression. And so I love what I do because it's all about educating people, helping them on that journey. And that doesn't mean that I have all the answers. I'm learning along the way. And it's trying to meet people where they are and take them to a place where they feel financially healthy and able to manage their money in a way that makes them enjoy life and feel financially stable.
You know, and I can remember times in my life when I didn't think about money as much for whatever reason, lots of different reasons. And excuse me, I can also remember times in my life when it was important to think about money, really important. You know, call that, you know, living a blessed life and living a challenged life, whatever you want to call it. There's different times in all of our lives when that's important and when that's not as urgent and important. But that whole phrase, living within our means, and that's I think a broad phrase, but I think it's an important thing to have. And just thinking about this, living within our means when we're employed is, you know, one maybe set of challenges or not, but it's way different when you have to live within your means when you're unemployed. Can you speak to that a little bit? What are your thoughts?
Sure, definitely. So living in within your means is something that I know growing up, the influences that many of us have come from our parents, our grandparents. You know, if you have anyone in your life that spent time during the Depression, they had a totally different viewpoint around money and the way that they were going to manage that money. But living within your means is not overextending yourself. And I think at some point, I remember when I went off to college, all these companies were very anxious to give me a credit card. And that kind of could start a journey towards overextending yourself and beyond what you actually can afford. And so throughout life, you're going to have different stages where you're going to have more means. And so it's going to be easier, as you were saying, to live within that. And during a time of unemployment or underemployment, it certainly is a bit of a struggle because suddenly that income has been reduced or eliminated entirely. And so where do you make up that difference? And one thing I really believe we need to stress is that not everything is permanent. Life is very much free flowing. So the circumstance that you're experiencing today is not necessarily going to be ongoing forever and ever. You know, if you have children, as I do, that you go through those stages, you think, oh, when will we get out of diapers? And then, oh, when will we, you know, when will I get my car back? Because my kids have taken my car and I haven't seen it in weeks and weeks. So much like that, this period of unemployment, this period of COVID-19 and its impact is not going to last forever. So we need to focus maybe a little bit more on the short term than the long term and not get so overwhelmed with feelings of dread and it's always going to be this way and I'm never going to get out of this hole, and really trying to cover those essentials. And right now you could probably name on your hand what those essentials are. For me to do my job or to continue a job search, internet is going to be very essential. Of course, food, you're going to want to have your utilities paid so that you have electricity. So those are the things you really need to focus on and let everything else that it's not essential kind of go by the wayside, at least in the short term, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does, Laura. I can, even for me personally, in December 15th, 2010, I quit my job and I went to zero income. But it was a part of a plan. And so I was fortunate I was able to do a plan. But one of the things that was a part of the plan was, for me, I got rid of direct TV. I got rid of the newspapers. I got rid of the magazines. And I made a few other personal changes too about minimizing my public appearances at places that needed money for me to be there. You know, my local pub. I did all those changes because they were important to do in order for me to be able to manage my, my lack of income at that point. So yeah,
Right.
not always hard to do, but it's sometimes hard to make that decision. Randy?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that, I think not only is it the necessities of life, but I think it's also the mental aspect that we stress out when we don't have the money. And so I think by creating plans, living within our means, it not only helps us to keep the lights on and all that, but it also helps us somewhat sleep better at night.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can't really put a price tag on that. I think we've all been in those situations at some point, or we know people who have. And I know I have clients that have said, "Hey, if I don't get a job in the next month or so, I'm living out on the street." And literally, I mean, literally, they're that close to being, booted out for, whatever. And I know we'll talk more about that, about resources that are available and when to reach out. And so if you're concerned or you know somebody who is struggling with those dollars, stay tuned, because we are going to offer some ideas and also resources that might be able to help you. But yeah, I totally get it. You try to live within your means. And how often do we make, $10 an hour, but we spend 11?
Yes.
And we make 100 grand a year, we spend 110 grand a year or more, because we know it's going to keep coming. The money's coming. And suddenly COVID hits, recession hits, and hey, I'm a great guy, but I don't have a job now. Where do I go? And so that's why Lori's here to try to help through some of that stuff. So anyway, good.
Let's look at another piece of this, Laurie, and that is, and it's something I never really did a good job of, but I'm fortunate that my wife taught my 4 daughters how to manage a budget. In our earlier conversation, you used a phrase that I thought was pretty cool, and that is a flexible budget that can help us, adapt through this chaos. Can you speak to that idea?
Sure. There's a really great expression that I heard years ago, and it's, you can't manage what you can't measure. So if you have no sense of where you are today or what your current spending is, we tend to go a lot on our feelings. Well, I feel like I manage my money pretty well. I feel like I have a pretty good handle on things, but feelings are very fleeting, and they're not real scientific. So getting those hard numbers, figuring out where you're starting is really important. And so what that requires is for you to track your spending. And I know that sounds very tedious, like, oh my gosh, who wants to go around with a little notebook or put something on your phone every time you spend money? But it's almost like if you had a big bowl of M&Ms and every time you walk by that bowl, you grab a few. If you had to write down every M&M you picked up, you probably wouldn't write it down, or you maybe would stop eating those M&Ms. So it's the same idea. If you have to write down every small charge that you've made or a cash purchase, it would probably shock you. So tracking your spending is a really good way of figuring out where your money's going, and then to tune into those triggers, as I call them. So many times our spending is around emotions. If you're happy, you celebrate by spending money. If you're sad, you kind of help those feelings with a little bit of ice cream or maybe a shopping trip. And sometimes the people we hang out with, they may have more disposable income. So that can also influence our spending habits. But once you have a good idea of what your spending is, then you really need to look at what those expenses are. What are those expenses that are necessary, those essentials that I spoke of? Then what are those variable expenses where I have a lot of control over how I spend that money? And putting that down, whether it's in a document or using an app that's available, there are many, many in the market. Just getting a really good handle on your budget is key to being able to make those informed decisions.
Yeah, I remember when my wife and I got married, we had no money. Then we decided to have 4 kids, and we had even less no money. Wow. And she used to manage her budget via envelope.
Yes.
And so there was an envelope for groceries, there was an envelope for the mortgage, there was an envelope for utilities, and then there used to be an envelope for entertainment. and it didn't get in the entertainment budget unless there was something left over on all the things that we had to spend money on. And I remember when we went grocery shopping, she'd pull out the cash from the envelope for groceries and go, "We got $21.63. Keep it between that, kids." That was
Yep.
her budgeting. So today is a little bit more sophisticated. I think she uses something called spreadsheets. I'm not sure what those things are. So
Well, there's actually an app called Envelopes, and you can use that same method using it virtually or digitally. And so, if that's a good method for you, I would definitely recommend that. But you can do it on your own. You could set up separate accounts. It's so easy to set up a bank account. You can do it online, and maybe set up a fund that's kind of your fun money or your entertainment money. One of the greatest things I ever did with my kids is get them an account at Allegacy, and I'm joint on those accounts, so I can monitor what they're spending, and I can transfer money in and out depending on if they owe me money. Then I'll take my money out from their account. So it's really been great to together talk about finances with my kids, because it's one of those things that people don't really like to talk about. There's a lot of shame and feelings around money.
yeah, it's one of those 2 or 3 conversations that don't come up at the kitchen table enough.
That's right.
That so.
That's for sure.
Let me say where I want to move to. By the way, James threw out mint.com. It's pretty
Yes.
cool app to keep track of where you put your money.
That is a very good app. And I would just add one more. If you are an Allegacy member, we have something called Money Management. It's built into the web banking platform, and it basically pulls everything that you're using. If you connect your outside accounts, then you have your full financial picture there. I use it every year when I do the FAFSA for financial aid, because everything is there, and it's just a one-stop shop.
Cool, real cool. So here's something else that we got to think about doing, and that is we love to celebrate, we love to party, we love to have fun.
Yeah.
But maybe during this, job search, diminished income, some of that needs to be put on hold.
Right.
So how do we get our frame of mind? Your thoughts, Laurie? Is there a way to get our frame of mind positioned so that we can, look for and plan for that celebration that we got a job, and then plan for those celebrations that we wanted to do, but we have to put out? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's really a great point. It all comes down to trade-offs. And I always use the movie example. If you want to have that movie experience, and right now we really can't have that experience as we did in the past, there's so many streaming services right now that have free streaming. I know you can get DVDs from the library. I believe that there's some downloads you can even get, so you don't even have to go there. You can pop up a big bowl of popcorn and have that movie experience. I know a lot of people are doing drive-through movies right now. And so, or drive-in movies, that's what I want to say. And so you can have that same experience without having the cash outlay. So anytime you can try to replicate those experiences but save money, that's a trade-off, and that's a really good thing. And I do believe that anticipation of your vacation is probably the biggest piece of the fun of having a vacation, is the planning and the thinking and dreaming about what's to come. And so I really encourage people to look ahead and really focus on that, and involve your family or the people you do life with, so that you can enjoy planning and thinking and keeping focused on sort of what is most important.
Yeah. Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder about this delayed gratification, and I'm making this up as I go because my memory is foggy, so I'm not going to hold anybody to this thing. But I had read years ago there was a study done where they studied very small children, and they put them in a room. Lori, if you know where I'm headed with this,
Yes.
They put them in a room, and again, I'm making up the exact example, but they said, here is a cookie, or here's a piece of candy, and if you can have that now, but if you can wait, 10 minutes or whatever, then you can have 3 pieces of candy. And they studied the children who took the one piece of candy, that immediate gratification, versus the ones who understood or believed that they were in line for three of them. And they traced them through their lives. And I don't know how it all worked out, but you're nodding your head. So to me, that was fascinating that they could look at that early age and somewhat predict life experience for them as they got older. Can you speak to that?
Well, I've heard of that study. There was one done with a marshmallow, one marshmallow now and two later. There's probably been many studies, but the idea is the same, that sometimes we want something in the moment. And again, that's an emotional reaction. So, and you see it a lot in our current time because of all the ads. I tell people, when you scroll through social media, it's no mistake that you're being bombarded with ads. Ads of things that maybe you were searching for the day before on the internet, or you can just mention the word, whatever product it is, and you will start to see those popping up in your feed. And it's kind of creepy. It's great if that's what you're looking for, but if you're trying to save money, that's a huge problem. So you have to really slow down the process. Delayed gratification is really playing into the emotional response. Like, oh my gosh, I want that and I want it now. If there's a flash sale, that adds added pressure and urgency. So people will jump on those sales because they're like, oh my gosh, this won't be here tomorrow. The one click in Amazon, that one click is such a dangerous thing because your head doesn't catch up to your heart or your emotions. And so suddenly something's at your front door the next day that you regret, overnight. So slowing down is what I tell people that can really help with that delayed gratification. So maybe putting something in your shopping bag and go to sleep. And the next day, if you still feel you need that item, then go ahead and make that purchase. Another idea that I just learned about was taking the item and the amount of money you would spend and calculate how many hours it would cost you to make that money, and see if it's really worth, let's say, a day's wages or a week's wages. And if it's not, then that could be a really good deterrent.
Hey, a couple things. Just a quick aside. You think about Christmas morning when there hopefully are presents under the tree.
Right.
Well, I'll get on this thing sometimes late in the evening, and it's impulse buying. So I'm on Amazon and I see this shiny object and I think, well, gosh, I might need that shiny object, and then maybe this shiny object. Next thing you know, about 2 days later, I got about 3 packages out there and I have no flipping idea what's in any of them. It's like Christmas morning, and I open them up like, oh wow, this is really cool. Did I order that?
I ordered this.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But in all seriousness, Mike dropped a question on us about timing and whether we should or should not dip into our 401k savings. Should we avoid it? He says he thinks that the Fed has reduced some of the penalties now due to COVID. So your thoughts on maybe dipping into 401k or other savings vehicles that you might have?
I think everyone's situation is going to be slightly different. So I don't want to give a blanket, this is what you should do. It's always good to think through these decisions and reach out to someone for assistance, because you want to make the best decision, most informed decision. So it is true that there are some loosening of those penalties for the 401k. What I would say is prioritize some of those contributions that you have set up. So for example, I have contributions to my 401k that I have somewhat reduced in times of challenges, because I don't want to stop contributing. And that is one way that you can kind of scale back. Another is if you're putting money aside in many different places, like an IRA and a 401k and a 529 plan for college savings, and maybe a health savings account. All those are really important, but maybe prioritize which ones are the most important. And there are scholarships for students. There's no scholarship for retirement that I have found yet. So retirement really should be a priority. I would say if you can reduce contributions, that would be your first step. If you feel you need to dip into any sort of investment that you have, the 401k, because they've waived those penalties, that is something that you could look at. But remember, your future is still going to be there. So you don't want to steal from your future self. If you can find ways to reduce your budget, I would say that would be the best thing to do.
And there's another thought that the conversation comes up as well. And Randy, we may have talked about this in one of the other shows, and that is, and I know it's tough, but maybe a gap job could help offset some of the pain. And so I've talked with guys before, people before, who went to work at Walmart, second shift, who went to work at Starbucks, second shift. I've talked with people who have opened up Etsy stores and eBay stores just to make a little bit of money, and they work these activities second shift. Now, the reason why I'm deliberately saying look for those gap jobs in second shift is because if you're looking for a job today, your Monday through Friday 7 to 7 job is to find a job. So use the off hours to find ways to generate revenue in whatever, interesting way you can. So
yeah, I would just speak to that I have been for the last 5 years doing freelance writing in my spare time. And that's been a great blessing these months of uncertainty and trying to put a little extra money away. I tell people, look at your skills and your passion and see what people would pay you to do. It could be simple. I have a son who's a whiz at selling things on eBay, and I would pay him happily to do that. If you're really good with computers, maybe you can do some technical support for people. Right now, with all the students at home trying to homeschool, parents are looking for tutors.
yeah.
So if you have very good skills, maybe in math or science or even a foreign language, you could certainly pick up that type of work. And I also know that Uber Eats and Instacart and all of those delivery services are helping supplement many people's incomes.
Yeah. I have one of my daughters is a professional photographer. She's all about what I refer to, my words, not hers, all about mommies and babies. That's the people, that's her people she takes pictures of. Well, when COVID hit, she couldn't do that work anymore. And it just pretty much shut her down. And, she was a big contributor to the family budget. So, but she made a sign. One day she took some old wood and she cleaned it up, painted it up, stapled it together. And she got one of these things called a cut machine that cuts stencils. And so she made a sign and somebody gave her $10 for it. So she said, well, wait a minute, let me try it again. So she made 2 signs and she sold those for $10 a piece. She's now created a side hustle that she's doing that has got really strong legs. And it's now something like all signs lead to Farmington. She has a business developing these very simple signs. My point is, just what you said, Laurie, she loves her handiwork and hobby crafting, and she turned it into a side hustle while she's waiting for her business to come back, and it's growing. You never know where your imagination may take you. So,
that's for sure.
Cool. Here's another thing. We have to find ways to budget our dollars when we're when in this time when we have little or no income going in. We have to figure out ways to budget our money, and maybe how do we take some of this money? What's some ideas you have about taking what we do have and what little that we have coming in, and maybe just setting aside as much as we can live liquid cash to help us during and when this gets during this chaos, and maybe when it gets tougher. Thoughts about managing that liquid savings, that active access money?
Right. So most people know the term emergency fund, and right now many people have turned to their emergency fund. And I think we think of it as just a singular fund. And it's funny when you talk to people, they say, oh yeah, I've got an emergency fund. And you're like, so do you have college savings? Oh yeah, it's in there. And do you have retirement? Oh yeah, there's a little bit of that in there. And they're talking about the same pot of money. And so they're counting the same money over and over and over. So really they don't have money to cover everything. And so what I suggest people do is set up different liquid savings accounts. So liquid meaning you can access it quickly, easily, and without penalty. And think more in terms of maybe what you're needed. So for example, the longer term savings, that's really clear. I'm not going to need this for a lot longer into the future. There's some that you will make maybe not so liquid because you don't need it right away. But there are some pretty predictable expenses that we all have that don't fall into our monthly budget. So for example, the tax bill that comes once a year. I know that if I pay my car insurance, I pay it once a year so I can get a little bit of a discount. Back to school shopping for many is a huge expense. The holiday season is another time of the year where it's a very predictable expense, but maybe you're not breaking it out over the 12 months. So when that expense hits your account, it can be pretty devastating. So putting aside some money into sort of a expected expense account, that's a really smart idea so that that will not derail you one month to the next. Another idea then is to have your emergency fund that is to cover loss of income. So that's when you have to start looking at, I need 3 months, I need 6 months of expenses. And again, I go back to how do you know, how can you manage what you can't measure? How do you know how much a month of expenses is unless you've actually looked at your spending and have a real good sense of how much you spend every month and a honest, realistic idea. So those would be some suggestions that I would have.
I'm with you. Hey, we're at the half hour point. This is the Randy Wooden and Teddy Burris lunch conversation. And our special guest today is Laurie Timm. And every week we look to bring somebody in who's bringing ideas that can help us in life as well as in career search. And so we're really fortunate to have Laurie from Allegacy Federal Credit Union join us today. And in another sort of aside, and that is, when about the time I was starting, quit my job to start this business, one of my daughters is Moolah Saving Mom. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Moolah Saving Mom, but she's a coupon coach. And everything she does, she gives away free. So one of the things that Moolah Saving Mom teaches, and my wife and I both learned from, is you don't need to spend $7 for a box of cereal. You don't have to spend $6 for a jug of laundry detergent. By the way, if you know, like me, just go out in the creek out back and beat it on a rock and hang it up on a tree. And you know, but seriously, if you pay attention to the logic behind couponing, you pay attention to the logic behind what's called bundling or matching coupons, you can save a huge, and I can testify this amount of money on groceries, and still eat the food you want to eat, use the laundry detergent, soap, and toilet paper you want to use. Just yesterday, I went and I bought, as a test, just to prove it would work, I went and bought 2 little plastic bottles of M&Ms. Well, they're typically 95 cents a piece. But because I use a coupon and I use some kind of matching that I didn't understand because I used my phone number to go to my Food Lion account, they gave me 47 cents back.
Wow.
I gave them no money. They gave me 47 cents and 2 little bottles of M&M. It's sort of a joke, but it's real. You can use couponing to help you, and it really can have a serious impact on your budgets. Laurie, thought, anything?
Yeah, I would just add to that. Many times there's a lot of thought put into the way retail and grocery is laid out. So you've probably heard that the healthier foods are on the exterior of the grocery store. The cheaper products are typically outside of eye level. So look down and look up and you'll find the same products. You know, a can of stewed tomatoes are going to taste the same whether it's a name brand or not. The other thing is those end of aisle sort of displays. They really call attention, especially if there's some sort of offer, but they don't necessarily have the best price. Or those, but I love it because it sounds great. You buy 2, you get 3 free, or, you know, 5 for $7, and you're trying to do the math in your head. If it's confusing, that's by design. So just be really careful and think about sort of always go with a list. So think about what you want to buy and also have a good sense of what things cost. You know, the Price is Right. I remember that show was really good about teaching you how much things really cost and finding alternatives. The dollar store is a great place to buy basic groceries. And who
Yeah.
would have thought? So,
Paper plates and toilet paper from anywhere.
yeah.
Almost. I've got a little bit of criteria, a little bit more sophisticated when it comes to paper plates. So,
Okay.
but yeah. So here's another thought too. We're going to have debt. If we have no income, well, maybe we are. If we have no income and we're worried about, as Mike brought up the question, we're worried about dipping into our retirement, which we know we need to keep building that to some degree or another, then there's the possibility of coming up with debt, whatever that debt is, you know, the second mortgage, another credit card. How do we manage that, Laurie? Thoughts?
Yeah, so debt is something that 80% of Americans carry some form of debt. So debt is not necessarily bad. We tend to look at debt as being smart debt would be anything that appreciates. So if you think of financing an education, that's something that will hopefully earn you more money in the long run. A house typically appreciates, a car, not necessarily. And credit card debt is what we call revolving debt, meaning that you can continue to charge and those charges add up because the interest is on top of the new balance. And if you carry a balance, you're going to pay additional fees and interest. And from the Card Act in 2009, the credit card companies are required to include in there how long it's going to take to pay off if you only pay the minimum balance. I don't know if you've ever taken a look at that from your statement, but it's pretty startling. So time is not your friend when you're looking at debt. And there's a couple different schools of thought about debt repayment. One is called the snowball method. This is, if you follow Dave Ramsey, this is the one that he endorses. It basically is you pay the debt with the smallest balance first so that you can get rid of it. And then you take the money you're applying to that debt and put it towards the next largest balance. You don't pay attention to interest rates as much. And basically you're building momentum. So the snowball is building and you're kind of excited because you're seeing some progress and you tackle debt after debt after debt. The avalanche method is the complete opposite. You take the highest interest rate and attack that debt first and then follow that same process. That is, the thought is you're attacking the debt that is costing you the most because you're paying more interest over that debt. I'm here to say that either way could be right for you, and I'm not going to tell you which one to do, because if you stay on that debt repayment plan, I'm tickled pink that you're sticking with it and you're paying off your debt. So that's much more important than, you know, well, you're going to save a little bit more if you do the one or the other. And there are calculators. We have a calculator on our website at allegacy.org where you can calculate that. You can do it in that money management tool that I told you about. They'll pull all of your debts and tell you when to pay them off and how to pay them off. But anytime you can consolidate that debt, if you can pay on the principal to get the interest payments down, that's always a good, smart move.
Curious, why would these two methods be snowball and avalanche? But anyway, you know,
I have no idea.
yeah, I get the model though.
Yeah.
It absolutely makes sense. And I'm with you, Laurie. There are lots of philosophies for managing debt and you know, reducing the risk, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm 100% with you. Choose something you feel comfortable that you can execute and pull off and
Yes.
keep going.
That's right. Yeah.
Here, it's something to throw in here. Is it Fran? Not anyway, it's in our Sunday paper in the business section.
Brand Daniel?
No, it's a syndicated column. It's on the front page of the business section, and it's all about finances.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in there almost every Sunday, the front page. There's this other guy that writes this column in the Sunday paper. You ought to check it out. It talks about job hunting every other week.
Oh yeah.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
But I digress. And it was some time back, there was the question that came up about okay, I don't have, what should I do with this unemployment money that I'm getting, or that at the time, the $600 a week that I'm getting? Should I use it to pay down debt, um, thereby saving interest, or do I need to put more into the liquidity component?
Right.
Um, because, who knows what tomorrow holds. And so do you have any thoughts on the why and how to move the dollars around to your
Sure.
benefit, especially if you're unemployed?
Right. No, that's a great question. And it's a question of, is it better to invest, whether that's a short term or longer term, or pay down debt? It comes back to, again, you can't manage what you can't measure. You have to run the numbers.
Yeah.
If you put your money away today in a basic savings account, you're going to get, peanuts. You're not going to get much money. So if you have a lot of debt, it would probably be better for you to pay down your debt, because that way that will remove some of that burden that you have, and the interest you're paying on your debt, especially if it's a credit card, it could be 20%. And if you have a very high balance, that's costing you a lot of money. So running those numbers, and again, you can go to our website and use the calculators there to see how much that would be. That would be my recommendation.
And I'd also add in that there's lots of different ways to achieve getting through this chaos and not having a job and diminished or zero revenue or income coming in. And one of the things that I think is important to do is not to make those decisions by yourself on your couch.
Right.
You really should talk with somebody who you trust and respect. And maybe it's your credit union representative who can help you with these ideas, because there's so many decisions that you have to make, so many different ways to analyze this, that sometimes we can't do it by ourselves. So better to
Right.
be smart about it. And so sometimes having a good conversation with somebody can help you make a better, or maybe a decision that you didn't even know you had.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I certainly would recommend that. We tend to Google everything that we struggle with in life. And I think there's so much information out there. Everyone has someone who's kind of an expert in things. And I think that people need good information to make the best informed decision that they can for themselves. So I really recommend that people go to reputable sources of information, whether that's a website, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB. That's a really good source. If you just type in consumerfinance.gov, that has a lot of wonderful resources, very unbiased, good facts, and they have a lot of really good coronavirus resources right now. I've really enjoyed listening and viewing the emails and website of something called Her Money. So if you're female and you like to, Jean Shatsky is the woman that runs that, hermoney.com. That's been a great source of information for me. And I've shared some of those resources quite broadly. And then the other one that I've been working with a little bit is the Financial Health Network. That's financialhealthnetwork.org. They're all about promoting financial health and measuring that and providing interventions for people to help them reach that state of financial health. And then one locally that I had the great privilege of being on the board for many years is Financial Pathways of the Piedmont, otherwise known as FPP. And their website is financialpaths.org. They provide a full range of consumer credit counseling, housing counseling, foreclosure counseling. They are the bankruptcy counseling agency affiliated with HUD. And so it's important to seek those good sources. And I'm definitely available if you're an Allegacy member and you want to meet with me one-on-one. I'm very happy to do that. You can find all the information of what I'm engaged with at allegacy.org. And if you go to the Learn tab and click on Tools and Tips, you'll find me in the Financial Health and Wellbeing section.
Is that financialhealthnetwork.org or networks?
Network.
Got it. I'm
Yeah.
going to make sure I share all these.
For sure.
So that really drives down. Randy, a thought?
Well, no, just to say that I know that was something that we wanted to talk
Yeah.
about was, okay, what are some resources that we can reach out to here locally or through the web on a national basis? I guess along with that is the timing of this, and
Mm.
do we need, when do we put our pride aside and our fears aside and our vulnerability aside and say, hey guys, I need some help here? Is there a tipping point? Are there indicators that we should be aware of
Mm.
that say, okay, or if we're a spouse or significant other of somebody who's lost their job, are there warning signs or indicators that say, hey, you know what, maybe we need to get some outside assistance here?
Right. I think most people don't take action until they've hit crisis level. Like collectors are calling me and I'm really struggling financially. Like I'm going to be thrown out on the street, as you alluded
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
But we don't have to wait for the crisis. Everyone's struggling in some way in their financial life. And so it's better to take that preventative approach, almost like you would with your physical health. You don't wait till you have signs of a heart attack before you seek help. So reach out early and often. And I'm happy to meet with people. I just met with a young gentleman 2 weeks ago whose mother connected me to him, and he's 23 years old, wanted to learn about credit. So I did a one-on-one session with him via Zoom, and that was a great experience, and I'm really happy to do that. And we do a lot of workshops as well. So that's another resource that we can provide.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I'm understanding, then it's getting the credit collection calls. I'm going to project here, not sleeping well at night,
Right.
getting into arguments about money, that feeling of helplessness. At some point, I think then it becomes critical to reach out, whether it's money or it could be other issues. But then
Sure.
from a financial standpoint, there are resources out there. So, Teddy, I think you're going to put those in the show notes so
Yeah, I
that
am. And
we'll have that info. And if you happen to have missed it, it'll appear here online. We'll post the replay of this show as well. I know we've got about 12, 13 minutes left. And so I don't have other questions, but I know that Teddy, you want to kind of.
yeah, I want to also bring this up, and Randy and Laurie,
Yeah.
Hear your thoughts on this as well. And that is that, that you just, here, I'm just going to paint a picture. You just got laid off. It's going to take you at least a day. And that, I'm being really sarcastic. It'll take you some time to find another job. It's not going to happen overnight. So that your revenue just got diminished. And and I'm just painting an analogy or an idea. You have a mortgage. You have, maybe you have a second mortgage. You got a car payment. Maybe you have 2 car payments. So you have these expenses that you have to pay, and you have people who expect you to pay it. What I teach people to do in my very simplistic ideas of financial management is call the people you owe money and tell them what's up, and then find out from them what you can do. Here's an example. I know firsthand because I did this research to be able to write this article. There are, I can't remember where I have my loan. I have a business car that I pay monthly on. I called the creditor up and I said, if I can't make this payment, what can we do? And they said, I think it was 3 times a year I can push the payment out to the end of the note. Now, I had no idea that I could do that. And what I'm saying is, until you call your creditor, your mortgage, your insurance, your car loan, et cetera, and ask, you don't know what your options are. So call and ask.
Yes, I would second that. And right now, because of COVID-19, there are a lot of concessions available, and all you have to do is ask. It may be that the payday is not good for you. Like all my bills hit on the same day. Well, just ask them to change that date. It may take 1 billing cycle, but if you're going to make efforts to pay them, they're going to make it as easy as possible for you.
And work with you. Make it a collaborative effort. So
yes.
Cool. Laurie, can you share with us your thought, a summary statement in this context for job seekers? What would you share with us?
Yeah, I would just say that I know the struggle is hard right now, especially in this environment, and there is a lot of stress that's not necessarily related to finances, but it always seems to come back to that. And that we will get through it, and there is a lot of support out there, whether it's these concessions we talked about or people that are willing to help. And you can overcome these challenges, and there are great solutions. So please reach out, and I would love to talk, if I can, just very briefly about an incentive that, it's not really an incentive, it's a savings campaign that we're launching. It's a 12-week savings challenge, because there's 12 weeks between Labor Day coming up on Monday and Black Friday. And we know that almost everyone, whether you have a job or not, would do well to save more. So we've created some tools and resources to help people, and we would love for you to join the challenge. You're challenging yourself, that's all it is. And hopefully by Black Friday, the start of the holiday season, you can amass some money to get you through the new year or the holiday season.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to put that in the show
Perfect.
notes.
Yeah.
Go out through NC Wiseman's website and on the YouTube channel for everyone. Lori, thank you very much.
Great. Thank
Every
you.
Thanks,
time
Lori.
we get together, I learned something, and I really appreciate your time. So, Randy, do you have a story for us this week? I gave you time to think through it, buddy.
It was a dark and stormy night. No, I'll tell you a story. Years ago, I was in watching a video of a preacher in a Sunday school class, and he talked about margins in our lives. Margins, and margins could be financial. So again, the liquidity, the savings, planning for the future, and that kind of thing. And by margin in life, if we live on the edge, you ever get where you leave late for work and you hope you don't hit any red lights, and you got this slowpoke guy going 10 miles over the speed limit, and you're right on their tail, beeping your horn, you're trying to pass them. You're living on the edge. Same thing with work. Everything's a deadline, and you put off, and at the end, there's no margin there. And if you live in that mindset, which is human nature in a lot of ways, we do things when we're forced to make decisions, when we're forced to. You mentioned about the heart attack. Okay, when the doctor says quit smoking and lose weight or you're going to die, well, okay, I'll do it. But you'd like to have some margins, whether it's time, whether it's money, and that way you're not pushed to the edge with no barrier there. And so, those are hard lessons to learn, and I've had to endure those through my own choices. I'm not alone. Others have had to do the same thing. We live and learn. So I really appreciate, Lori, and I mentioned this to you earlier today when we spoke, that what you shared with us today is not just good intel for job hunters that might be out of a job now, but it's also good for people who are sitting here going, well, that's not me. I have a job. I've never been laid off. I've never lost my job. So what do I have to worry about? And you know what, when COVID hit, I ran into a lot of guys that had essentially that same conversation. I've never been without a job since I was 15 years old, kind of thing.
That's right.
And then suddenly it's, holy cow, how do I manage this, not only for myself, but dealing with my family and those that depend on me for those dollars. And so a lot of things swirl around. That's why I was really glad to have you come on here today, because again, this applies to so many people, regardless of where they are from an employment standpoint. It really does.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. It was really fun.
One of the things that you made me think of, Laurie, in this conversation is that I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, and I'm a little bit older than you guys. 82.
A lot older.
82, 83, we had our first kids. And one of the companies I worked for went bankrupt. And I lost all my retirement, this, $63 billion retirement fund that I had. Maybe it was $63. I lost it all. Insurance went away. I had to pay cash for my last daughter that was born. And by the way, I didn't pay cash. I paid it out. I paid for her over 10 years. No, I paid for her over 10 months. It wasn't that long, 10 months. And I think I still owe him a payment, but he never came back to me on that. My point was, it was stressful. And then I went to work years later for another company that went bankrupt. I lost that retirement fund, lost my expense check for thousands of dollars of travel. It was really painful. Back in those days for me, it was very, very painful. And for my wife and for my kids. And one of the things that I learned between the first time and the second time that this happened, that made it a little bit more tolerable, is not to pretend. We lost money. We couldn't pay bills. We had to sell a family heirloom to be able to pay the mortgage payment for 2 months. And so we often want to bottle this up and just own it within ourselves and not want to burden the other people in our lives, our people who we love, trust, and respect. And that, I think, was one of the biggest things I learned between the first time and the second time, is not to do that. Have open conversations with your family. Be willing, to whatever extent appropriate based on the age of your children, to let them know what's going on. Because when you try to hide it, it just eats at you more. And I've been doing this for a long time as a career coach, and I will tell you that is one, money and the fear is one of the things that can create death.
Right.
I know people who have died from that for lots of different reasons. And the stories aren't important, but it is that serious. So I just implore you, for yourself and for the sake of your family, not to bottle it up and protect people who love you enough to want to be a part of it. So conversations, my tagline of my business is that it all starts with a conversation, including getting past this chaos.
That's right. Use it as a learning opportunity, especially if you have children. So
Absolutely.
I echo that.
Yeah. So Laurie, where can people find you? I think it's just allegacy.org. Yeah, I know it is legacyfcu.org all forever.
Well, now it's just allegacy.org. And if you go to the Learn tab and go down to Tools and Tips, that's where you'll find me, and on LinkedIn as well.
I think you're fairly active on LinkedIn with some beautiful content. I've noticed that. I don't know where you got that idea from.
I don't know. I had a really good coach.
So yeah, look for Allegacy. Look for Laurie Timm, Lori, last name Timm on LinkedIn. Go to allegacies.org's Learn tab and follow Laurie, and I promise you will get value from it. Randy, any closing statement?
Well, again, thanks to Laurie for coming out. I do want to mention our guest for next week.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't want to forget that. We've only got a minute or two left. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be job joy, how to find your joy job even during challenging times. Kristen Zavo is going to join us, and she's the author of Joy Job, Your Guide to Success, Meaning, and Happiness in Your Career. How often have you guys heard, hey, I just need a job. I just need to pay my bills. I just need a job. I just need a job. Well, there's a difference between I just need a job and deriving joy, happiness from the kind of work you do. And I'm blessed to say, and I think I can speak for the two of you, all three of us are in a role where we feel like what we do matters. People respect it. It helps people. And the cool thing is we get paid for it. And so all of that is a good stuff. She'll join us next week. We're just about out of time, but again, thanks for joining. If you are a job seeker, reach out to Teddy and reach out to me. We're happy to try to help you. If you need help with LinkedIn, saying Teddy, me, we do a lot of the same stuff. We even do a show together.
That's right. Yeah.
We like that.
We're world renowned and we're now syndicated. I don't know what that means, Randy. I'm making stuff up.
I like it. I'll go with that. But again, if you have ideas for topics or speakers, we'd love to hear it. We're lined up right now a couple of months in advance. So things are rolling. We're looking at potential other venues and other things going on. So a lot of ideas out there. So please be a part of our discussions. We do them every Wednesday at noon. If you haven't registered, well, then you're not on the show, right? How about that? They pay me for thinking, Teddy.
Right.
They pay me for thinking.
All right.
Thanks again, everybody.
All right. Thank you, dear.
Take us home, Teddy.
All right. Y'all take care. We'll see you next week.
Bet. See you.
Thanks.